We had to wait a whole long 1 day, but we got some big info on the talent system that we got. Honestly, I'm going to tell you right now, the expansion is looking excellent. Like, the new zones are gorgeous. The concepts that they announced are excellent, but this is the way forward. Like this thing could be the biggest thing that's ever happened to WoW, and let's hope that we like what we hear here. So let's take a look. We're going to read all of this stuff from Blizzard, and then we'll give my thoughts on it, okay? So Blizzard, that's the company. They're saying this. Hello, we have seen a lot of questions about the talent system preview here and in other feedback, and we want to start answering what we can. Note that it's still too early for a lot of specifics, including posting a complete tree for people to peruse, because obviously, I mean, like, that's not happening anytime soon. We've probably got at least like 7 months before anything's going to be even remotely finalized. Anyway, there is still a lot to discuss about our approach and our goals for the system. So now here's some basic questions. Will they be the old style of talents? 1% gains here and there that you put 5 points into, or is each box only 1 point? Primarily the latter. We're still experimenting quite a bit with drafting trees, but currently the majority of nodes are 1 point, with some 2 and 3. It turns out that the game has a lot more custom abilities and bonuses to potentially award in a tree than it did many years ago. Oh, yeah? Multi-point passives still exist, although even there, most are more class-specific than simply giving stats. Think of the sorts of passive bonuses that have existed in systems like Conduits, Artifacts, or Azerite. I love hearing that, man, because those are way more interesting. Passives don't have to mean boring, right? Passives like, something like that improves the amount, like the speed of Death's Advance, right? Like they have the same thing for Paladin. The horse is like 70% longer. It's like 100 something like that percent longer at the max rank. That's a passive, and that could be a talent, and that would be amazing. I love hearing that. More complex than plain stat bonus, but simpler than the sort of thing that would be currently at a level 50 passive talent or legendary. I mean, it sounds like we're on the same page there. That sounds great. 3 point passives can still have important purposes for doing things like balancing different paths. Well said. Okay, what percentage of the tree will be filled out at max level? Interesting question. Very, very roughly speaking, thinking something like 2 out of 3. It's general, in general, and that would, yeah, if it was more than that, what's the point of having it? In general, it is fine for people to have quite a lot of stuff, especially considering that the tree contains many different kinds of things. Some are comparatively basic abilities and bonuses that many players of a given spec will have. Some are the more advanced optional bonuses that currently live in systems like legendaries, currently live in systems like legendaries, as well as optional utility of various kinds. Players need to be able to spend enough points to have some things from all of these categories. Having a class and spec that is complete in the way that a current live class is, albeit much more customized. At the same time, enough of the tree has to be left unselected at max level to make the choices between different paths matter, where the points you're leaving out still include some potentially high value options. Usual design maxim here. If you feel torn between your last point is leaving out something you want, no matter what you do, we've probably done it right. That's a good way to put it. I mean, obviously, you can't have literally every single talent. The question I have is like, what does the future look like? And so I think, people haven't really started thinking about it in this way, but this is how I kind of think about things. I was thinking about like super long-term stuff, right? So they said we're not doing like borrowed power. We're going to try to invest permanent power into our character through this system. So what does this look like in 10.1 and 10.2? Like where do you get that power? You know what I mean? Like I was thinking like more talent points, but I worry about like socketed nodes, like kind of like a glyph system where you get talents out in the world and then now you could have those talents. And that sounds like a great idea. But then, like one way or the other, where does the player power come from this expansion and how is it permanent? Because if you make it permanent and you make it really engaging in Dragonflight, what happens in 11.0? What happens in 9.3? Like, and are we gonna, I don't know. So most people probably aren't thinking of that, but they're saying things that are making me think about that now. So it's interesting to start thinking about that right now. Anyway, you mentioned being able to save your builds to your character. It would be pretty awesome for a way to share those in game between players. So someone could just load in someone else's build and it's filled in for them. And they say this. So whenever a question like gets that kind of answer, whenever they ask a question like that themselves, that means they're doing it. By the way, this is a feature we currently have listed as something we'd like to do, though it's still too early to say anything more. That means they're doing it. Okay, now that was like a while ago, 2 hours ago. And then for whatever reason, they have a whole nother post on different questions, and there's a lot of them. So let's read every single one of them. I'm so excited. This is like the thing I've never, like legendaries and Azurite armor and all this stuff. They were good because it offered a lot of choices. This is the actual best thing they've ever done, like 100%. So let's read it. We've gathered several questions, mostly from players on Twitter asking Desvin. Here are our answers to those. When do talents become available? That's a great question. The talent system becomes available at level 10 when you choose your specialization for your class. Now, that's interesting. Me and Cop were talking about this. I wonder what no spec characters look like. Maybe they don't exist anymore. Anyway, for the Evoker, because they are starting at a higher level, the talent tree will be made available at some point during the starting experience. So just probably like Death Knight used to be in Wrath. And if you play Wrath Classic, you'll see it. You get a ton of points like as you get through the starting zone or something like that. Anyway, how many talent points do you get and how do you get them? Talent points are obtained by gaining character levels. Oh, that's surprising. You gain 1 point every level, alternating between a talent point for your class tree and one for your spec tree. It's very interesting. In the pre-patch at level 60, you'll have a total of 51 talent points to spend, with 26 in your class and 25 in your spec. Well, that's not as many as I thought we were going to have. That looks like there's a lot more than... It looks like there's probably like 70 points that you could possibly spend. When you reach the maximum level of 70 in Dragonflight, you will have 61 total points, 30 in each. And that's interesting. Okay, so we'll see more what they elaborate on there, but I already have some thoughts on that. Can I get all of the talents in the class and spec tree? No, of course not. Why would you even ask that? You will not be able to obtain every talent in these trees. Similar to the current system, max level builds will have to make decisions about what to include and exclude. Can I spend points in a spec tree that is different from my current spec? No, you will not be able to spend points in a spec tree different from your own. If you put points in the restoration druid tree and swap to balance, the effects from the restoration tree will no longer apply to you. You will have new points to spend in the balance tree. I kind of can't stop. I want to stop and talk about this. So the big thing I'm worried about here is that it's just going to be the exact same system we have currently with just more numbers involved, like more clicking involved. And, so they said these words before in an interview. Like they want there to be a difference between, like in the old days, like in Wrath especially, you can be wholly prot, like a focus with some good defensive things that could help the group, or you could be wholly ret with some more offensive focus things and like more buffing and stuff. And it's like, okay, those were very different builds, right? And you were taking things from ret. So they're now saying explicitly that no, that is not how it will work. Why are we doing this then? Like, what's the class customization tree for? It makes me worry that it's just literally going to be exactly what we have now, with maybe like 4 or 5 actual interesting choices, and then everything else would be like, do I want Sunfire or Moonfire? Like, I don't hope that it will be more interesting than that. But yeah, certainly if I'm not actually allowed to take Frost talents as a Death Knight, see, like what I really liked was they even said the word like hybridity. Like in Classic and through Wrath, you could literally put, say you have 60 points, you can put 20, 20, and 20. And Diabolical always tells a funny story about a guy that I think it was like his real life friend or his brother or something like that even, that literally thought if you wanted to be a rep paladin, you had to put every single one of your points in the rep paladin tree. So it's like that kind of stuff is like really interesting. And that's like the charm of the talent system. And even though it wasn't developed very well back then, if they're not going to do something like that now, they're missing a big, that's why do it. So we'll see what they do. Anyway, how does spending points in a talent tree work? You must first obtain talents in the top row of a tree first. Then after obtaining all ranks in any talent, you may spend points in subsequent talents in the tree, indicated by an arrow. Then after obtaining all ranks in a talent, you may spend points in subsequent talents in the tree, indicated by an arrow. If the talent has multiple arrows leading to it, you may obtain it after fully buying at least one of the prerequisites. Your class tree may grant you 1 or 2 starting talents automatically before you have to start spending points, based on what specialization you are. These do not cost any talent points and are free. Oh, that's interesting. So let's say like if you're a paladin, you might have to put a point in to consecrate as holy or ret. But as prot, you get that for free because that's like a core spell that is a holy That is a spell that all 3 classes can take. So it's kind of interesting. So it sounds like what they're doing is that they're elaborating on the class only spells. Like right now, if you play a no spec character, a lot of them have a lot of class only spells. In fact, Priest is extremely deep on that front. They have like a full rotation of class only spells. And then they have the spec only spells on top of that. And if you don't pick any of those, like you don't pick a specialization, then you're stuck with only the stuff on the left. And so it sounds like that's going to be a lot deeper now, and we'll see what they actually do with that. Your class tree where that certain rows don't allow you to progress beyond them until you have spent a certain number of points in talents you have access to. Okay, so we'll see how that proliferates. What do the shapes of the talent points mean? So we talked about that on the live stream. So squares are active abilities, circles are passive effects, and I can't do that one. Octagons are choice nodes, where you get to pick one of multiple options in that talent node. That's a great question. I wonder how you choose what those options are. I guess probably Blizzard does that. I was really thinking there was going to be something that you can collect and potentially slot in there, and we'll see what they do. What are the diamond-shaped abilities? Those are a mechanic that, as of this writing, we are not planning to include. Oh, we will give further updates as needed as we continue making changes to the set of features and mechanics in the system. So that's on the preview, but not included. Okay. What are those talents with a small arrow on both sides of it? Those are the talent selection nodes. When you hover over that node, it will present multiple options for you to select one of. These choices can either be a new active ability or a passive benefit. Yeah, and so that kind of sounds like what we have currently. And so like there's going to be a few of those where there's going to be like talents that are kind of like 3-pronged, and you probably pick one of, just like we have currently. And then, well, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. Trying to be optimistic, but yeah, it doesn't sound like there's going to be like an immense amount of customization here. Anyway, how do talents with multiple ranks work? Talents that have multiple ranks will require additional points to be spent per rank of the talent. Currently, we don't have any active abilities with multiple ranks, only passive effects. The value of these passive effects may not linearly scale with points invested. You must purchase all available talent ranks of a multi-rank talent to progress further down the tree from this node. That's interesting. Okay, will some talents be in more than one specialization tree? This is a good, let's hear what this is. Where this makes sense, yes. For example, both Feral and Guardian might have the Berserk talent in their talent tree, while Restoration and Balance will not. That's just a spell. It's like, what? It's like their main spell. See, I'm already starting to worry about this, man. Like, they're just going to take away all the actual class spells and make them into talents. And this could be so much more than that. And obviously, the good thing is, like, even, if 10.0, this is not great, dude, this can be built on for years to come. Like, this is a much better idea than people, like, this could go for years of value. Like, they could crush this. So even though right now I'm not hearing what I'm liking about, some of these ideas, this is big, man. It says, we know that Berserk is not exactly the same for Feral and Guardian, but want to be clear that the talents do not have to be exclusive to one spec tree or another because it is the spec tree and not the class tree. Okay, so take that a step further and start adding more interesting things. Like, I just don't really know why they wouldn't do that, to be honest. And that's just, that's a really bad example, to be honest. Like, Berserk is the main DPS CD for both of those specs, isn't it? You can't not have that as either of those, right? It's like, God, it's not a great example. Anyway, will the class talent tree change at all when changing specs? With very few exceptions, nothing will change in the class tree when changing your specialization. One such exception might be Countershot, which will change to Muzzle if you choose Survival. Oh, that's interesting. They are both the interrupt button, but are themed differently and have different cooldowns. Keeping that distinction is important. Yeah, and I guess that's one of the downfalls about having these specs be what they are now. Like back in the day, it was a lot easier to say, like, okay, well, if you get a range spell, you're playing a range class. Like, there was no, I guess, Enhanced and Ellie still kind of existed. So I don't know. Things were a lot different back then, so it didn't really work that way. If the class tree just utility and the spec tree is where all the throughput is? No, there can definitely be some throughput increasing talents in the class tree, but the spec tree likely has the majority of them. One of the main purposes of the class tree is to give you a place to explore parts of your class that are not focused on your main role's throughput, such as utility or abilities that are more closely connected to other specializations. Let's read that again. One of the main purposes of the class tree is to give you a place to explore parts of your class that are not focused on your main role's throughput. So that's important, at least. That could be a big thing. Like that, certainly, hopefully they'll be more adventurous with what they put in there then. So we limit the pressure to make throughput optimizations in the class tree. That's great. Yeah. And I think that's a really good idea. And I hope that we will get more adventurous. Like the big thing I want to see is things that were exclusive. Like we keep seeing Druid talk about. So the big one for me is Solar Beam and Trees. The Guardian or whatever. Yeah, Guardian could have it too, of course. But yeah, Feral Druid really needs those things. This could literally save Feral, guys. And if it doesn't, that would be really unfortunate. But all they need to do is put Solar Beam or, Trents or whatever they're called. Force of Nature, I think it's called, whatever it's called. Put that in the tree so all 4 specs can take it. And we suddenly have a very interesting class, right? Anyway, are all talent points new abilities? No, most of them are existing things from the current or past game, but there are also new actives and passives in the new class and spec trees. That's a dumb question. You think you're going to get like 50 new abilities? Anyway, what about the abilities you gain when you level up in the new player experience on Exile's Reach? Exile's Reach is remaining unchanged for the most part. You will still obtain many fundamental class abilities from completing the quests and this content. Your interaction with the new talent system will begin after you reach level 10. Yeah, so that's not surprising. But I do think what this does is it completely replaces all the actual spells that you would learn. And I don't know if that's a good thing. Like, I think, the cool thing about Classic was like, even though you had to constantly go back and train your spells, it was that you would a lot of times you'd get new spells and you'd get new talents. And those things together were really fun. But now it seems like that's probably just gone and you're only going to get talents. And you're actually not getting as many talents as I expected. So yeah, I was really hoping this was going to really make leveling interesting. And it could. It definitely could. The problem I have with leveling in Classic, and something I've been experimenting with, is that you get way too few talents. Like early on, like up until like level 40, you in Classic, you really don't feel like you're playing the spec. Like a Paladin might as well just be like a no spec Paladin until like, well, certainly Paladin's a bad example because you get a really powerful defining spell at 20, right? But most classes don't get something until 30 or 40. A lot of 40, like Priest, Shadow Priest gets a Shadow Form at 40. That's like a huge definition of the spec. And so that's probably still going to suck about this because it's like, okay, and it still sucks even now. Like you don't get Bloodlust until 47. Actually, yeah, 47. It's like maybe in 48. It's like, dude, that's like one of the main spells in the game. Why is that not? I don't know. Anyway, what about some abilities that are super important for gameplay, such as interrupt abilities that you don't gain from the starting experience? They're gonna be in the talent tree. We are currently trying to focus as many combat altering abilities as possible into the new talent trees. This can include things such as movement abilities, interrupts, dispels, hybrid healing options, defensive abilities, and etc. Our goal is to set up the talent trees and paths so that these opportunities to choose between different types of utilities, but not to, for example, abandon all utility choices entirely in order to maximize your DPS. It's good to hear that. If you choose not to have an interrupt, it is likely because you traded it out for some other type of utility or CC that you believe would be more useful in those situations. Let me tell you right the fuck now. If somebody shows up to Mythic Plus Dungeon and they try to rationale why they don't have an interrupt, I'm done. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one. That's gonna happen. Oh my god. Some feral druid's gonna be like, dude, I have trees, but I don't have an interrupt. Oh my god. Anyway, this inverse is also true. Specializations that do not have a certain capability in Shadowlands, such as an interrupt, may be able to obtain it by giving up something they currently do have. All healers have access to an interrupt. That is going to change Mythic Plus. I'm telling you, man. That's one of the biggest things that can come from this talent tree. It's going to completely flip the paradigm of the game over. Because think about this, man. Gorfien's Grasp. Guess who might have access to that again? The DPS Death Knight specs. Like, come on, dude. That's huge. You got to admit, man, that could be huge. Those types of utilities can be huge, dude. Will there be some sort of talent, loadouts, or preset talents we can swap between? Yes, this is an important tool for you to have when dealing with a more advanced talent tree system. You will be able to save and name many different talent loadouts and swap between them with ease. Why would you want a preset tree? Like, dude, that's the next level of gamers in 2022, man. I can't even make the decisions for myself. Like, let's just literally have Blizzard make them for me. Anyway, won't people just go to a website and find a build that and just use that instead of experimenting with the talent trees? We're sure that this will happen because people are dumb. We're also sure that people will make fun and distinct builds that work for their own playstyle or of playing the game. It's like, why would you ask that question? It's such a waste of them answering this. Wow, there's a lot still. Okay, the talent tree looks very complicated and overwhelming to me compared to the current version of talents in Shadowlands. Luckily, it's a video game, so you can spend a little bit of time with it, and then it won't look so overwhelming. And this is a frequent topic of discussion for us. The new system is definitely more complicated, but also allows for significantly more freedom in you choosing what is important to the activities you are doing while playing the game. There is a cost to this new complexity and depth, but we feel that the benefits of the new talent system are strong enough that it is worth the cost here. Thank you very much for saying that. We are trying to make sure that new players face a more limited number of choices in the early rows so that you don't have to wrap your head around the whole tree until you have spent some time leveling a class. Is that really a problem? Anyway, in addition, the easy abilities to respec in town mean that you don't have to analyze the entire tree in order to make immediate decisions, as you can simply reallocate the points later if you decide you'd rather be on a different path. How about you just say, like, yes, we assume that you guys are actual, like, non-stupid. It's like, come on, man. It's not freaking complex mathematics. Like, this isn't a physics class. You know what I mean? You just look at them, you read them all. Sure, maybe even it takes 30 minutes to read them all, and then you try some things out. It's sad, dude, but that's the kind of people that are holding this game back, man. You have it on both sides. You have like these hyper, like, and I call a lot of people like dumb, but I mean like actual like low IQ people who literally are incapable of thinking for themselves. And Blizzard is having to design the game around that. And then you have the people at the top end who are like miles above even a player like where I'm at. Like these are people like 100 times better than me. You know what I mean? And so like imagine trying to balance the game for somebody who thinks a talent tree, like a static piece of paper that you just fill dots in, is too complicated. And then a person who's literally gonna like go to the absolute like 0.0.1% percentile of maximization. You know what I mean? It's like that is probably very difficult to do. How much of my class is going to be in this talent tree compared to other add-on extra systems like legendaries? Ooh, great question. Okay, that's a very good one. We're trying to put as much class-related stuff as we can into this new talent system at a singular place to manage your character. There will still be some abilities that are granted to players from leveling up, but significantly fewer. Okay, so there will be some. We recognize abilities such as Eye of the Beast or Astral Recall or Teleport Moonglade aren't combat altering choices you're making, and you would be hard pressed to spend a talent point to obtain this ability again. Oh, really good point, actually. Yeah, imagine wasting a point on Moonglade, Teleport Moonglade. So that's I'm really glad to hear that. Those abilities are not going away. They are not going into the talent tree. They will just be a bonus spell you get while leveling up. That's excellent. So there will be bonus spells. Other than that, we're trying to put as many combat-related abilities in the tree as we can, which does mean you are going to have to invest talent points into the system to get your current abilities back. I'm actually really interested in, I've been wanting to do this on Classic at some point. No talents. I think it would be even harder in Live WoW. Sounds like it would be very difficult because it's like, do you even have spells without talents? Like literally, do you actually have spells without talents? I'd be very interested in seeing what a no talent, not no spec, no talent character would look like. We might be doing that on the beta when it comes out. Anyway, with the above statement that we have to spend talent points to get our current abilities back, does this mean there is nothing new? Oh my god, man. Absolutely not. There will be some new abilities to Dragonflight. They did they edited that and forgot to delete new, as well as returning artifact traits, set bonuses, legendary effects, umbilicus. The new system also opens up some opportunities for you to get some abilities that were otherwise locked behind a spec choice, or to possibly have combinations that were impossible in Shadowlands, such as multiple talents from the same row. See, I told you, dude. Red Thirst, Bone Storm, we go. This is going to be so powerful. Dude, Blood DK is going to get so powerful. If that is actually possible, Dude, that's the problem with Blood DK, dude. Some of the best talents are right next to each other, man. I cannot wait to see what this looks like for every class because I swear there's like some classes that it's like it doesn't even really matter for, and then some that it's going to be so freaking good, man. I just cannot wait for this. This sounds so awesome. Even though I'm like constantly finding things I don't even like about this, my height meter is still at like 99.5%, dude. Like this is how cool this system can be and will be. Does this mean I can get a talent from any spec on my class with this new system? No, there will still be plenty of things in the spec specific talent trees. Guardian Druids will see plenty of tanking related things in their spec tree that a Resto Druid cannot obtain, and vice versa. A Resto Druid can invest more points in the bear related abilities on the class talent tree for more defensive options, just as a Guardian Druid can invest points into more healing options from the class tree. The new spec talent trees will be heavily focused on your combat role of healer, tank, or DPS. And so I'm just going to say this right now. The difference between this version and the classic version is not the talents themselves, it's the philosophy behind the classes. Like in classic, you were just a paladin, and then the talents were there to specialize you, right? But now that's not the case. You're a paladin, then you pick a ret paladin, and then you become a specialized ret paladin. So, I think they were a little misleading when they said the whole holy prot, holy ret thing. Is that's not how it's going to be. You're not going to be a holy ret. You're going to be a ret that specializes in single target or a ret that specializes in AoE, something like that. And I don't know if that's as cool as it sounds. Not as cool as I expected, but yeah. I think that people will be maybe a little disappointed when they hear that because I think they want that like true hybridity where you can be a resto druid, but you could also be a tank. You can be half and half. And that's just how the game used to work back then. Like you could have done that even without talents, and now the game doesn't work that way anymore. So anyway, if a Shadowlands Covenant or legendary ability is in the talent tree, and I also have that Covenant ability or legendary equipped, what happens? The plan currently is that these nodes will still exist in the talent tree and you can obtain them, but your Shadowlands Covenant or Legendary will override it. You want to have multiple versions of the same spell to cast, or double stack legendary effects or anything of the sort. Not every Shadowlands Covenant ability, Legendary, Soulbind, or Counter effect will be staying in the talent tree. No shit, right? I mean, come on, there's like what? Is there like 20 legendaries per spec? I mean, we don't even need to go through that. Obviously, they're not going to be all there. And that's pretty much it. How does AP, wait, we're not even close to being there yet. How does respecking work? Respecking should work similar to how it currently does in Shadowlands, with you being able to swap talent builds around. As far as removing a few nodes and spinning them elsewhere, we're still working on that flow, but want to make it as simple as possible. So, what about PvP talents? PvP talents will continue to work the way they do now. There will be PvP talent choices nodes on the new talent UI frame where you choose extra effects while in PvP situations, which is good. And I'm glad that they're staying. I like the concept for leveling, especially. What about the API for talents? This is a great question that I'm sure our UI team will work out. You are not forgotten, add-on authors or users. I'm sure we're not. Will my class be getting ability in the new talent trees? Maybe. There's a lot of work to be done still, and we need to be careful about how much stuff we're adding to these trees. If we just put all 21 talents from Shadowlands into the trees, that's a huge amount of extra stuff your character can get. Oh, that's scary to hear that. So we probably end up losing talents, huh? Well, I don't know, man. I'll tell you right now, I think it's really encouraging. I'm really excited. The fact that they're already answering this kind of stuff. There's not. Oh, no, there's another interview too, huh? To watch this another day. But yeah, I'll tell you what, man. I have to say, the talent system seems like it could be absolutely huge. It could be literally the best thing that ever happened in this game if it's done right. And I will say that a lot of my optimism for it, it went in the wrong direction. I would say, like, I originally thought like it was going to be really cool to be able to have, say, like Templar's Verdict as a Holy Pally, something like that. I would love to do that. To be able to play like an actual healer, with good healing spells and a good priority on healing. Because like I kind of did that in Classic, right? Like I played, you would just go down deep enough to get Seal of Command, and then you would go down into Holy. And that was basically like you were a Rep Paladin, but you also had Holy Shock. And that was really cool. And so that doesn't sound like that's happening, this expansion. But I do think that the sky's the limit with this. And it's just like, once you've seen other games do stuff like this, man, you start to realize like how creative, how creative things can get. And it's just going to take them to get a little comfortable with it first, because this is going to be a big step for them balancing wise. And once they get comfortable, like think about, what we've had, right? Like Legion legendaries to Shadowlands legendaries. The system, and I think like most people, if you could just be objective about it, it has improved a lot, right? And so the system that we have now in Dragonflight is going to be the Legion legendaries. They're going to be cool and people will like them, but there's going to be some rough edges. And like even with Legion legendaries, I look back and didn't like a lot of them and didn't like how you got them and didn't like how the power worked. And it's probably going to be the same way, right? It's not going to revolutionize the game in 10.0. Might not do it in 10.1, but it's going to get better. 10.2, going to get better. I'd imagine there's going to be a lot of room for growth. So I hope that this is interesting to you guys. I really do. This is probably like classes at their core are adorable to me. Like I love the concept, dude. I love how different classes are from each other. WoW does this the best of any game I've ever played. Like even like Pokemon and games with like wide swaths of combinations you can play doesn't live up to WoW. Like a Paladin and a Death Knight, dude, they feel so different. They look so different. The spells are so unique. They don't have a single overlapping spell. Think about that. Not a single overlapping spell. And that is all like that's so important to me. I love classes at the base. Like I could see myself, like I always dream about being like a different, like, I'm not a Death Knight main. Like in this reality, I'm in a different one, like I'm playing a paladin, I'm playing a druid, I'm playing a shaman. These are like dreams like not real dreams, but like these are things that are in my head. Like, I wonder what my life would be like if I was a shaman instead. Like that's the core of WoW to me. And honestly, if it's not to you, I feel bad for you, honestly, because like, dude, playing alts is great and all, but like if you don't actually identify as like you don't feel like you're a main Death Knight or something like that, this is like a huge part of the game, man. And so being able to customize, that's why I love WoW, right? Because being able to play a Death Knight and experiment and play it and do a lot of crazy things like being a specialist, you know what I mean? I adore that. I really hope that this will allow me to live out that even more. Thank you for watching. We will continue to follow this topic as it unfolds, and I have a lot of things planned for delving into it. So you're going to see a lot of videos on the future. Thank you for watching.